I was sitting on the edge of my bunk at Fort Dalton, boots still on, uniform half unbuttoned, trying to remember the last time I'd actually slept 8 hours in a row. The barracks were quiet except for the hum of the AC unit fighting a losing battle with the Indiana humidity. It was late, technically early, and my body was running on black coffee, and whatever stubbornness keeps soldiers upright long after common sense taps out. I didn't plan on checking my phone again. I'd already done enough damage for one night, but when it buzzed the second time, the vibration rattled against the metal frame like it wanted to file a noise complaint. I glanced over without moving. The screen lit up with my sister's name. Savannah. Of course. It had been 32 minutes since I cut her off financially. 32 minutes since I deleted every recurring payment, every automatic transfer, every little digital leash I'd wrapped around myself in the name of family. My hands had still been shaking when I closed the banking app. Maybe because it felt like I was cutting off a limb. Maybe because it felt like I was finally breathing. Hard to tell at that point. But after the night I'd had, the last thing I needed was another message from her. Still, I picked up the phone. She'd texted, "You ruined everything." That was it. No context, no explanation, no punctuation even. Just the kind of vague accusation people send when they know they're guilty but still want to win the argument. I didn't answer. I didn't plan to. The truth is, I didn't have the energy, and even if I did, I wasn't going to spend it on someone who treated me less like a sister and more like a walking ATM with emotional add-ons. I wish I could say the message surprised me, but it didn't. Not after what had happened earlier that day. The sound of Lily's voice asking if her aunt was still coming kept looping in my head like some broken recording I couldn't eject. I kept seeing her standing in the yard with the party lights flickering behind her, holding the hand-drawn birthday card she made for Savannah. Kids don't understand false promises. They only understand waiting, and hope, and disappointment when the person they trusted just doesn't show. That was the part that stung the most, not the skipped birthday, not the lie Savannah told. Not even the Instagram photo of her out with her boyfriend while my daughter sat watching the gate. It was the way she said it when I confronted her. The tone. The complete absence of care. Lily isn't my problem. She said it like she was talking about a scratched car or an overdue bill. Like my daughter wasn't real. Like she wasn't family. I'd heard a lot of things in my life, drill sergeants shouting in my face, officers tearing apart reports, people arguing in the heat of deployment stress, but nothing lodged itself under my skin the way that sentence did. The room felt smaller just thinking about it. I let out a breath and leaned back, staring at the ceiling as the events of the past months started lining up in my mind whether I invited them in or not. The weekly payments. The excuses. The way my mother always told me, "Your sister just needs a little more help." The way Savannah never once said thank you but always said, "Can you send it early this week?" Like it was normal to demand money from the person you claim to love. The worst part? I'd let it happen. No one forced me to send her $700 every week. I did it on my own. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself she needed the support. I told myself I owed the family because I was the one who went overseas, because I was the one who missed holidays, because I was the one who couldn't be there for every emergency or family dinner or birthday. Guilt is a powerful currency, and I'd been paying interest for years. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the exhaustion settle deeper. There was no going back now. Cutting off Savannah wasn't just a financial decision, it was a line drawn, a boundary set after too many years of letting her push past all the others. The truth is, I'd been afraid to do it sooner. Afraid of the backlash. Afraid of how my mother would react. Afraid of being labeled the bad daughter, the soldier who got too tough for her own family. But today changed that. Watching Lily blow out her candles without the people she trusted, most people who lived 15 minutes away, was enough to pull something tight in my chest and snap it clean in half. And once it snapped, there was no taping it back together. Not this time. My phone buzzed again. Same message. Savannah must have been resending it, like hitting copy-paste would suddenly make me cave. I set the phone face down on the metal nightstand. The vibration stopped. The room went quiet again. The quiet was strange, peaceful in a way that felt unfamiliar. I let myself sit in it for a moment, breathing in the stillness like it was something I'd forgotten I was allowed to have. No demands, no guilt. No emotional blackmail disguised as sisterly love. Just silence. The barracks hallway creaked as someone returned late from duty, footsteps echoing for a bit before fading. I glanced at the clock. Past midnight. Technically, tomorrow already. The start of another training cycle, Another day of juggling military duty with single motherhood. Another day of trying to make everything work even when life insists on throwing metaphorical bricks at me, and occasionally a real one thanks to basic training. I took a slow breath and tried to reset my mind. I had to stay sharp. Lily needed me sane, not spiraling. Work needed me competent, not distracted. And I needed myself whole, not half alive from carrying everyone else's weight. Cutting off Savannah was step 1. Maybe step 100, but still the first one that mattered. Outside, a truck engine rumbled to life before idling down the street. A dog barked somewhere. The base never truly sleeps. It just lies there humming, reminding everyone that whether you're ready or not, the next day always comes. I picked up my phone again, not to respond, but to clear the notification so I wouldn't see Savannah's name lighting up my screen. I deleted the message without opening the thread. My thumb hovered for a second, then I set the phone down again. Somewhere between the hum of the AC and the weight lifting just enough off my shoulders to breathe, I realized something. Maybe this wasn't the end of anything. Maybe it was the first time in a long time I'd actually chosen myself. This wasn't about revenge, not yet. It wasn't even about the money. It was about drawing a line and refusing to let someone step over it again. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, letting the moment settle. The cot creaked quietly. The night was still. The silence held steady, as if waiting for whatever came next. My hand was still resting on the phone when the weight of everything finally pushed me back into the memory I'd been avoiding for months. It didn't hit all at once. It crept in, piece by piece, the way problems usually do when you're too busy to deal with them and too tired to notice they've piled up. Back then, none of this felt like a spiral. It felt like responsibility. It felt like doing the right thing, the thing any decent sister would do. At least that's what I told myself every time I opened my banking app. It really started the morning I came home from my 11-month deployment in Kuwait. Most people imagine reunions full of tears, banners, and long hugs. Mine was mostly paperwork and a car that wouldn't start in the airport parking lot, which set the tone for everything that followed. When I finally got back to Redwood Springs, my mom acted like she'd just finished running a marathon with a backpack full of bricks. She hugged me, said I looked skinnier, asked if I ate enough over there, and then launched straight into how exhausting it had been for Savannah to handle things while I was gone. Savannah didn't look exhausted. She looked irritated that I interrupted her complaining long enough to show up. I remember sitting beside my mom at the kitchen table, the same table we'd had since I was a kid. Mom set down a list of expenses from the months I missed, even though I'd been sending money from overseas already. It wasn't a bill exactly. More like a reminder of all the things Savannah had supposedly taken care of: grocery runs, doctor visits for Dad, repairs on the old water heater. And every line ended with a number, a big one. Mom sighed dramatically and said, "Your sister did her best, she just isn't as strong as you." That sentence was the start of my biggest lifelong problem, being labeled the strong one, which in family language means the one who can take unlimited advantage without complaining. Savannah didn't even pretend to hide her expectation. She leaned back in her chair, swirling iced coffee she probably bought with my deployment checks, and said, "We could really use your help catching up. You know, since you're back and all." Translation: you have money, we don't. Pay up. I didn't argue. Maybe because I was jet-lagged. Maybe because I just wanted everyone to be okay. Maybe because guilt makes people stupid. I set up a weekly transfer of $700. At first, it felt temporary, just until everyone found their footing again. Savannah said she'd start looking for steady work. Mom said she'd handle the bills moving forward. Dad nodded the way dads do when they're tired of being in the middle. It didn't feel unreasonable until the third week, when Savannah asked if I could send the money on Thursday instead of Monday because she wanted to get ahead of some things. I didn't ask what things meant. I moved the transfer early. Then the next week she asked again. By the end of the second month, she stopped asking and started expecting. It became normal for her to text me at 7 a.m. with, "Send it early today?" as if I lived to fund whatever problem she created for herself that week. Every time I hesitated, Mom would text some version of, "Your sister is struggling. She carries a heavy load." As if I hadn't spent almost a year carrying a rifle in a desert where the heat could boil the soul out of your body. Apparently, Savannah's heavy load was part-time stress and a chronic allergy to accountability. Still, I kept paying. Lily was the only reason I didn't lose my mind completely. Those first few months back, she'd run to me every time I walked in the door, babbling about school, drawings, playground drama, and whatever random thought 6-year-olds consider life-changing that hour. She'd ask if Aunt Savannah might take her to the park, like before. Before what? I didn't know. As far as I could recall, Savannah had taken Lily to the park exactly once because she needed fresh air after a stressful week. Lily remembered it like a national holiday. I tried to keep things normal. I tried to believe Savannah would step up. I tried to pretend that if I just kept helping, eventually something would change. But nothing changed except the list of things Savannah claimed she needed money for. Her car needed a major repair, even though she barely drove it. The internet bill was overdue. The electric bill, the water, the gas. She said she was juggling so much and didn't want Mom or Dad to worry. Somehow I was the only person she didn't mind stressing out. I started transferring extra on top of the $700. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want my parents living in the dark while my sister sat in the glow of whatever streaming subscription she'd forgotten to cancel. At some point, I asked to see the actual bills. Savannah said, "Why don't you trust me?" with the emotional tone of a teenager caught sneaking out. Mom said showing the bills would embarrass Savannah. Dad sighed again, which had become his official contribution to our family dynamic. The moment I realized this wasn't helping anymore was stupidly small. Savannah sent a message asking if I could add $200 just this once to cover an emergency. I asked what the emergency was. She said it was personal. I pushed. She snapped. And I heard myself apologizing for even asking. That was the moment something cracked. I didn't say anything out loud, but a quiet, logical part of my brain finally whispered the thing I'd been avoiding. This isn't support. This is dependency. And you built it. But I didn't stop. Not yet. I was still the strong one, still the reliable one, still the one who believed that maybe family loyalty meant carrying more than your share without complaining. And if anyone asked how things were at home, I'd give the same answer every soldier gives when they don't want to get into it. Fine. Most of the time, it wasn't fine. I'd finish training drills, peel off my uniform, sit at the kitchen table with Lily's drawings taped beside the bills I shouldn't have been paying, and watch the transfer confirmation blink on the screen. Payment sent, payment sent, payment sent. Every Monday at 9, like clockwork. I wish I could say I didn't know what was happening. I did. I just convinced myself that being taken advantage of was cheaper than the fallout that would come from saying no. And none of that even touched what happened next. The realization didn't hit like a punch. It settled in slowly while I was rinsing my coffee mug at the sink one morning, letting the hot water run over my hand longer than necessary just to feel something steady. That's usually how truth works when you've been avoiding it. It shows up in the middle of ordinary moments, completely unimpressed with your schedule. I dried the mug, set it upside down on the rack, and opened my phone because Monday was creeping up again, and Mondays meant $700 leaving my account whether I wanted it to or not. The transfer screen popped up automatically, almost like the bank app was tired of my hesitation and wanted to speed up the suffering. $700, every week, without fail. You'd think seeing the same number that often would numb you to it. Somehow, it did the opposite. It reminded me of everything leading up to it. That week, Savannah had asked for just a little extra again. Not for bills this time, she wanted help covering something she called a temporary setback. I asked what that meant. She didn't explain. She said, "Just send it, Emily. Don't make this complicated." Because in her mind, questions were complications. Boundaries were complications. Accountability was complications. The only thing that wasn't complicated was me opening my wallet and quietly accepting whatever version of the story she handed me. I hit the transfer button anyway. It wasn't bravery. It wasn't generosity. It was habit and guilt piled together like dirty laundry I didn't want to sort. The truth is, whenever money was involved, something in my family shifted into a dynamic I could never quite untangle. Savannah became helpless. Mom became dramatic. Dad became silent. And I became responsible for everyone. The irony? I was more comfortable dodging incoming fire than dealing with the emotional minefield created by my own sister. That month alone, I covered their electric bill twice, paid for a mechanic to fix a car. Savannah somehow kept braking without driving anywhere, and sent 2 separate transfers for groceries. One of those, I later found out, went toward a weekend brunch Savannah deserved after a stressful week. I only learned that because Lily saw the pictures on Savannah's social media and asked why Aunt Sav could buy fancy waffles but couldn't visit her. I didn't have an answer. Not one that made sense to a 6-year-old. Not one that made sense to me either. At some point, I tried to talk to Mom about all of it. I told her I couldn't keep sending this much money every week, especially when most of it didn't seem to reach the bills it was meant for. Mom immediately shifted into her favorite emotional weapon, disappointment. She tilted her head, sighed the way only mothers who believe they're martyrs can sigh, and said, "Your sister does so much for this family. She just needs support. You're strong enough to give it." Strong enough. I hated that phrase. It was code for, you're allowed to struggle as long as no one else has to. I asked Mom whether Savannah had actually paid any of the bills she'd taken responsibility for. Mom hesitated for a moment, just long enough to reveal the truth before saying, "It's not about the bills, Emily, it's about family." Which, in our house, translated to, don't question Savannah. Dad didn't say much. He never did. He'd sit in his recliner, watching sports reruns with the volume low, nodding along to whatever Mom said as if agreeing was part of his morning routine. I used to think he stayed out of things to keep the peace. Eventually, I realized he stayed out of things because he'd given up a long time ago. Meanwhile, Savannah carried herself like she'd earned every dollar I sent. She'd toss out lines like, "Well, you're lucky the army pays so well," as if my job was lounging at a resort instead of waking up before sunrise to run drills until my legs thought about quitting. Or she'd complain that managing the household responsibilities stressed her out, even though the only thing she managed consistently was shifting blame. The longer this went on, the more everything stretched thin: my patience, my savings, my sanity. Even my relationship with Lily was absorbing the strain. She'd overhear small bits when Savannah called demanding something. Kids always pick up more than you think they do. One night, Lily crawled into my lap and whispered, "Are we in trouble? Aunt Sav sounds mad all the time." I told her no, of course not, but the knot in my stomach tightened. The real shift happened one weekend when I had a rare Sunday off. I drove over to check on Dad because Mom said he hadn't been feeling great. When I arrived, he was fine, sitting in his recliner with a bowl of pretzels, watching a documentary he'd probably already seen 3 times. Mom was pacing the kitchen, talking to Savannah on speakerphone. Savannah was crying. Or trying to. Her crying always sounded like an audition tape. She said something about needing money urgently because everything was falling apart. I leaned against the doorframe, listening. I didn't interrupt because I wanted to hear exactly what she'd tell Mom when I wasn't around. She said, "Emily doesn't understand how hard it is for me. She doesn't care. She makes everything difficult." That was the first time I heard how she talked about me when she needed something. It was like a switch flipped. Suddenly, I wasn't the helpful sister. I was the obstacle, the villain keeping her from her perfect life where she got all the benefits without lifting a finger. Mom lowered her voice when she realized I was standing there, but Savannah kept going, louder, angrier, more entitled with every word. I walked outside because I didn't trust myself, not to say something I couldn't take back. The air was cold, the yard was quiet, my hands were shaking again. That was the moment I understood the truth I'd been avoiding. Savannah didn't see me as family. She saw me as a resource, a paycheck, a tool. And I had let her. I drove home that night with Lily asleep in the back seat and the radio low, letting my thoughts race where they wanted to go for once. I thought about every bill I'd paid, every lie Savannah had told, every guilt trip Mom had layered on top. I thought about my dad's silence. I thought about the way Savannah had talked about me without even hesitating. Somewhere between Redwood Springs and the base, the last pieces of denial finally burned out. I kept one hand on the wheel and let the truth settle the way. Truth eventually does quietly, firmly, without asking permission. I let the truth settle long enough for my jaw to unclench before shifting my focus to the only thing that mattered that week. Lily's birthday. Planning something cheerful was a lot easier than thinking about my sister's entitlement, so I threw myself into it the way any single mom with limited time and too much guilt tends to do. I bought the slip and slide she circled in a catalog, hung streamers across the backyard, filled a cooler with juice boxes, and ordered a cake big enough for a party twice the size. None of it was expensive, just colorful and loud the way a 6-year-old likes. Lily danced around the kitchen while I prepped, humming something off-key, her hair bouncing in a messy ponytail. She kept asking when Aunt Savannah was coming and whether Grandma and Grandpa would come with her. She said it like it was a guarantee, as natural to her as breathing. It didn't matter how many times Savannah flaked on her. Kids don't track patterns. they track promises. 2 days before the party, Savannah texted that she'd definitely be there. I didn't trust the wording at all. Savannah only used the word definitely when she was lying or wanted something. Still, I told Lily, because she deserved the version of the world where adults kept their word. When the day finally arrived, the sun was out, the yard was warm, and everything smelled like sunscreen and birthday sugar. Kids from Lily's class showed up one by one, leaving little presents on the table. Parents made small talk about kindergarten assignments and weather patterns because that's legally required in suburban gatherings. Lily kept stopping mid-run to check the gate. Every time she saw a car, she'd gasp, straighten her dress, and wait for whoever stepped out. None of the cars were Savannah. Still, Lily wasn't discouraged. "Maybe she's parking," she said, pushing a curl out of her face. "Maybe she's bringing Grandma. Maybe they're getting balloons." The hope in her voice made my chest tighten in a way I didn't appreciate. I told her to keep playing. She did, but she kept looking over. At 2:30, the kids were splashing around in the inflatable pool. At 3, half the guests had to leave for soccer practice and piano lessons. At 3:15, the cake candles were melting into little wax puddles. I kept checking my phone even though I knew better. No text. No call. Nothing. I tried to distract Lily by starting a game outside. We blew bubbles, pulled out sidewalk chalk, and used the slip-end slide until her hair stuck to her forehead. But she still kept checking the gate, small hand shading her eyes, waiting for the one person who'd promised she wouldn't miss it. At 3:45, she asked quietly, "Is she coming?" I crouched down next to her. Maybe she hit traffic. We live in a town where traffic means 3 cars behind a tractor. Lily didn't know that. She nodded and kept waiting. The last family to leave handed Lily a gift bag and told her happy birthday one more time. When their car pulled away, the yard suddenly felt empty in a way that wasn't about missing people. It felt empty because someone was supposed to be there and decided not to be. Lily sat on the little bench near the fence with her birthday card still in her lap. She'd colored it herself, drawing a giant stick figure of Savannah with what looked like a sparkly dress. She'd even glued a plastic gemstone in the corner because Aunt Sav likes shiny things. The fact that she paid attention to that while Savannah couldn't bother paying attention to her was something I felt physically for real, right in the center of my chest. She glanced up at me, lower lip pushed forward slightly. Maybe she forgot? There are moments when parenting feels like answering the simplest question with the most complicated truth. I brushed her hair back and said, "Maybe." It was the softest lie I could manage. She leaned her head against my shoulder, tired from running around, tired from hoping. Around 5, I carried her inside for a bath while she held the card tight in her hand. She put it on her nightstand after drying off, arranging it like something fragile she didn't want to break. I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and told her she had a good day. She nodded, because she's a kid and they're built to bounce back faster than adults. When she fell asleep, I checked my phone again. Still nothing. No apology, no excuse, no explanation, just silence. Out of some self-destructive curiosity, I opened social media. The first thing I saw was Savannah's latest post, a picture of her at a rooftop bar 3 towns over, drinking something neon and posing like she'd just solved world peace. The caption read, "Much-needed night out." The timestamp overlapped perfectly with the hour Lily sat waiting for her. My chest went hot, the kind of heat that isn't anger yet but is about 10 seconds away from it. I set the phone down before I threw it. Then I picked it back up because throwing it would mean buying a new one, and I'd already spent enough money on things that weren't for me. I tried calling Savannah. She didn't answer. I called again. Still nothing. I walked outside to the porch to breathe. The sun was setting, throwing orange light across the yard where plastic cups and wet footprints still covered the grass. The decorations fluttered in the breeze like they were mocking the whole day. I looked at the gate Lily kept staring at and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not sadness. Something quieter, something final. I called Savannah one more time. This time she picked up. Her voice was annoyed, like I was interrupting a manicure. "What?" I said. "You missed Lily's birthday." She sighed dramatically, the kind of sigh meant to communicate boredom. "God, Emily, I had plans. I'm allowed to have plans." I told her Lily waited for her. She didn't care. She said, "You're always so emotional about that kid." That kid. Then she said the line that stuck with me more than anything else before it. "Lily isn't my problem. Stop acting like she matters to me." It wasn't yelling. It wasn't explosive. It was flat, irritated, dismissive, like she was talking about a package delivered to the wrong house. Something in my chest went cold. Completely cold. I didn't argue. I didn't ask anything else. I ended the call, set the phone down, and stood there long enough for the last bit of daylight to fade out of the yard. The silence didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt accurate. Inside, the house was still, and the only noise was Lily breathing softly from her room. I walked past her doorway, glanced in at her sleeping with the birthday card still next to her pillow, and felt the truth settle again, clear this time, sharp, refusing to be ignored. Some things you can let go. Some things you can excuse. But not this. Not what she said, not what she chose, not what she did to a 6-year-old who loved her without question. I stepped back into the hallway, and the air felt different as I moved. The shift in the hallway air was enough to make me stop walking for a second, like my body was catching up to something my mind had already decided. I didn't feel angry, I didn't feel sad. I just felt done, which is a strange kind of calm when you've spent years bending yourself into shapes that kept everyone else comfortable. The quiet in the house wasn't heavy anymore. It was honest. I walked into the kitchen, turned on the sink, and let the water run while I tried to steady my breathing. Habit more than need. I wasn't washing anything. I just needed the noise. The cold water hit my fingers, and I kept them there until the numbness reached my knuckles. It grounded me just enough to pull out my phone. I didn't open social media. I didn't stare at Savannah's post again. I dialed her number because there were still a few sentences floating in my head that needed to exit my system before they calcified into bitterness. The call rang once, twice, 3 times, and then she answered with the same tone she used earlier, like I had interrupted her mid-lie. "What now?" she said. No hello. No apology. Not even fake politeness. Just that tone. The tone of someone who believed the universe owed her convenience. I kept my voice steady. "You told Lily you would come. She waited for you all day." Savannah exhaled hard into the phone. "Emily, I already told you, I had plans. I'm not rearranging my life because your kid wants to show off a cheap birthday card." The words hit like something sharp, but they didn't knock me over this time. They clarified things. She kept talking, filling the silence with complaints about how I always make everything dramatic, how she's tired of being judged, how she shouldn't have to feel guilty for missing a party when she's already dealing with enough. Then she got to the part she meant to land like a finishing punch. "Lily is not my responsibility. Stop acting like she matters to me." Except it didn't land the way she thought it would. It didn't crush me or break me or make me question anything. It just confirmed everything I'd been refusing to see. I let her talk until she ran out of breath, the way you let a child tantrum until they wear themselves out. When she finally paused, waiting for me to explode or cry or beg, whichever reaction she preferred that day, I didn't give her any of the options. I said, "Okay." Just that. One word. Calm. Final. She didn't know what to do with it. "Okay? That's it? You're not even going to argue?" "No," I said. "I'm not." "Wow," she scoffed. "So you're just giving up?" "I'm choosing peace," I said, and I meant it. She started saying something else. Something snide and sharp, but I didn't hear the end of it because I hung up mid-sentence. The silence that followed didn't feel rude. It felt necessary, like closing a door that should have been closed years ago. I stood there with the phone still in my hand, screen glowing back at me, waiting for another incoming explosion. When it didn't come, I finally looked down at the time. It was 9:07 p.m. That number mattered only because for the past several months, that was the time I usually checked the week's finances, reorganized the recurring payments, and reassured myself that keeping Savannah financially stable was the same as keeping the family stable. But the kitchen felt different under the dim overhead light. The bills on the table looked different. Even the chair I usually sat in to process the financial mess looked different, like the moment had repainted the whole room without touching anything. I opened the banking app. The login screen blinked for a second before pulling up the list of recurring payments, each one labeled with my name, each one tied to someone else's need. I hovered over the first payment, the one for $700. My thumb hesitated not from doubt, but from the muscle memory of years saying yes to things I should have questioned. Then I tapped it. Cancel. Confirm. The next payment sat below it. Electric bill. Cancel. Confirm. The next one. Gas bill. Cancel. Confirm. Car repair fund. Cancel. Confirm. Spoiled food that needed replacing. Cancel. Confirm. All of them. Cancel. Confirm. Cancel. Confirm. Cancel. Confirm. By the time I reached the bottom of the list, I wasn't shaking. My breathing had evened out. My focus had sharpened. There was no dramatic music, no sudden gust of wind blowing through the window like a movie trying too hard to symbolize freedom. Just a clean digital list with clean digital cancellations. The final item was the one that always hit the hardest. Automatic transfer. $700. Every Monday at 9. The one that started because I wanted to be a good daughter and slowly warped into a financial leash I'd been dragging behind me like a sandbag in a training exercise. I deleted it. The confirmation screen blinked once, then disappeared. That was it. 8 months of habit gone in a second. The room didn't feel lighter. I did. I locked my phone, set it on the counter, and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't cinematic. It was just air leaving my lungs the way it should have been doing all along. There was no satisfaction yet. No relief. Just clarity. I walked down the hallway to check on Lily before going to bed. She was asleep, sprawled sideways with her stuffed bunny in one arm and her birthday card still sitting beside her. I brushed a bit of hair off her forehead, careful not to wake her, and whispered something I didn't need anyone else to hear. "You're what matters. Die." I closed her door halfway, letting the soft glow of her nightlight spill into the hall. The quiet stretched between me and everything that had happened that day, not heavy or suffocating, just there, honest, steady. When I stepped back into the kitchen, the phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't rush to grab it. I didn't feel dread. I didn't feel panic. When I finally picked it up, Savannah had sent a single message. "You ruined everything." The words didn't land the way she intended. They sat on the screen, small and powerless, like something that had lost its grip. I cleared the notification and set the phone face down, letting the silence return exactly the way I wanted it. I left the phone face down on the counter long enough for the glow to fade from the screen, long enough for the kitchen to feel steady again, and long enough for my heartbeat to return to something that resembled normal. I wasn't waiting for another message. I wasn't expecting an apology. I just stood there, letting the quiet work through the last pieces of tension in my shoulders. The house felt different, not lighter, not heavier, just real in a way it hadn't felt in months. I walked to the window and looked out at the empty backyard. The streamers were still hanging lopsided from Lily's party, edges curled from the humidity. Her chalk drawings were fading into the concrete. The slip and slide lay crumpled in a corner like a deflated memory. Nothing dramatic, nothing tragic, just the aftermath of a day that meant the world to her and absolutely nothing to Savannah. It was strange how cutting off someone financially could shift everything so quickly. Not externally, Savannah didn't know the half of it yet, but internally. There was no guilt creeping in, no wave of, maybe I was too harsh, no instinct to fix anything. Just a sense of neutrality, as if my brain had finally turned off the emergency alarm it had kept running for years. I locked up the house, turned off the kitchen light, and headed to bed. But sleep never came. Not because I was anxious, because my mind finally felt clear enough to point out what had been wrong for so long. Every moment I'd spent trying to keep the family together was suddenly visible from a different angle, one that made the whole thing look ridiculous. The money wasn't the problem. The expectation was the entitlement, the dependency. The way Savannah weaponized helplessness while I let responsibility become a personality trait. When the alarm finally buzzed at 5:30, I got up without hitting snooze. Military life trains you to stand before you think, move before you feel. My muscles went straight into autopilot, boots on, hair up, uniform smoothed down. I moved through morning prep with the same calm focus I used before deployment missions. It wasn't intentional. It just fit the mood. I checked on Lily before leaving. She was wrapped in her blanket burrito style, soft breaths filling the room, her stuffed bunny tucked under her chin. Kids sleep like they trust the world completely. I envied that. I drove to the base with the windows cracked and the morning air cutting through the last of the stagnant weight in my chest. The sun was barely up when I walked toward the training field. Sergeant Evans spotted me and raised an eyebrow like he always did when he suspected something personal was happening. "You look unusually calm," he said. "That bad?" I asked. "No, that obvious." I could have brushed him off, but Evans was one of the few people who didn't treat questions like intrusions. He had that older brother energy, minus the part where older brothers usually steal your food. He watched me for a second before he asked, "Everything good at home?" I shrugged. I handled something I should have handled a long time ago. He smirked slightly. If that's code for finally setting boundaries with someone, congratulations. Most people wait until they're 50. It's code for cutting off my sister, I said. Evans let out a low whistle. Financially? Completely. That'll rattle the nest. It needed rattling. He nodded in a way that told me he approved, even if he didn't know the details. Good move. Sometimes the quiet decisions are the real ones. Died. It wasn't advice, it wasn't praise, it was just an observation, but it landed exactly where it needed to. I carried that with me for the rest of the morning. Training ran long. Sweat, dirt, repetition, the usual things that force your brain to focus on something other than your own problems. My phone stayed in my locker the whole time. Every now and then I wondered if Savannah had messaged again, but the thought didn't come with dread anymore. It was more like curiosity about a show you stopped watching because the plot got annoying. When training ended, I grabbed my phone and saw 2 missed calls, both from Mom. One voicemail, one text from Savannah that simply said, "Answer your mother," no context, no explanation. Just the same bossy tone she used when she believed she had leverage. I didn't reply. I drove home instead. Mom had left a voicemail saying she heard something upsetting and needed to talk. That could have meant anything: Savannah crying for attention, Savannah twisting the story, Savannah performing emotional gymnastics to get everyone on her side. Mom always responded to those performances like she was the audience in a theater with no exits. The moment I walked through the door, Lily jumped into my arms talking about school and lunch and some kid who brought a lizard to recess. Her voice washed the rest of the world out. I set her down, made her a snack, and listened to her chatter about things that actually mattered. When she ran off to draw in her room, I finally looked at my phone again. Savannah had sent a follow-up text. "You better fix this." That one made me actually laugh, because of the absolute confidence packed into those 4 words. Fix this? As if I broke something. As if she wasn't the reason for all of it. As if her financial collapse was a natural disaster instead of a lifestyle choice. I put the phone down, pulled out a frozen pizza, and preheated the oven. Dinner for Lily stayed simple on training days. While I sliced strawberries, the phone buzzed again. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Still ignored. By the 4th buzz, I finally checked. "Mom." Again. She'd sent, "Savannah is very upset. You shouldn't have cut her off without warning." That sentence told me everything I needed to know. Not, "Why did you cut her off?" Not, "What happened?" Not even, "Are you okay?" Just immediate defense of Savannah, as if that role had been tattooed on her years before I was born. I didn't reply. I didn't feel like getting pulled into a guilt circuit where Mom acted hurt, Savannah acted helpless, and I acted like the family's unpaid emotional janitor. Pizza finished baking. Lily and I ate at the table while she told me about her drawing of a superhero bunny saving a playground from a mud monster. It was the most peaceful dinner I'd had in months. After she went to bed, I sat on the couch with my phone beside me. I wasn't avoiding anything. I wasn't building up to anything. I just didn't feel like handing my night back to people who hadn't earned it. When I finally opened my messages, Savannah had sent one last text. This one wasn't dramatic. It wasn't screaming for attention. It was blunt. "You ruined everything." I stared at it for a few seconds before setting the phone down without responding. The house was quiet. Not the fragile quiet that comes after an argument, but the grounded quiet that comes when you make a decision and don't regret it. Nothing about the room changed, but something in me had. The shift inside me didn't explode outward. It spread quietly, the way warm water does when you step into a bath without realizing how cold you were before. I sat on the couch long enough for the silence to settle, long enough to let my breathing sink with it, and long enough to remember that peace wasn't supposed to feel foreign. The lamp cast a soft light across the room, and for once, nothing in the air felt tense or waiting to break. I would have stayed in that stillness a little longer if my phone hadn't buzzed, with the kind of insistence only a troublemaker could send. This time it wasn't Savannah. It was a notification from Facebook. Normally, I wouldn't have checked it. I barely used Facebook except to keep up with local events for Lily's school. But something about the preview line caught my eye. "You all need to hear the truth about what my sister has put us through." My stomach tightened before I even opened it. Savannah had posted in the biggest group in our town, Redwood Springs Mom's Circle. A group with more than 3,000 members and absolutely no filter. If someone burned a casserole, the group knew. If someone got a new haircut, the group had opinions. If someone's dog barked past 9 p.m., there were digital pitchforks involved. And Savannah had chosen that exact stage to air her theory of reality. The post was long, longer than anything she'd ever texted me. Funny how she suddenly found the energy to write paragraphs when she was talking about herself. The opening line said, "My sister Emily is cutting off our family and leaving us in a horrible situation. I don't know who she is anymore." Perfect. The victim act. She went on about how she'd taken care of mom and dad alone for months, while I was off doing my military thing, which apparently was her delicate way of describing serving overseas in a combat zone. She wrote that she'd been emotionally abandoned, that she was begging for communication, and that I was cold and harsh for removing basic support with no warning. Basic support. As if $700 a week plus all the extra bills were some kind of casual spare change arrangement. My jaw tightened as I scrolled. She played every card she had: the helpless daughter card, the struggling sister card, the selfless caretaker card. She was practically building a deck. Then she sprinkled in lies like cheap seasoning. She claimed she'd spent her last dollar trying to keep the house running. She said she skipped Lily's birthday because she was caring for our mother during a medical emergency. She even implied that Lily didn't seem bothered because children forget these things anyway. I didn't need to imagine the comment section. Mom's Circle ate drama like it was brunch. And sure enough, the comments exploded. "That's awful. Family should help family. So sorry, Savannah, stay strong. Military people sometimes change. Maybe she needs counseling." No. $700 a week? That can't be true. No one sends that much. She should be ashamed. Ashamed? That one hung in the air a little too long. I felt a prick of heat at the base of my neck, but not anger. Not the kind Savannah expected. It was more like irritation at seeing lies dressed up as truth while people applauded them. My phone buzzed again, then again. Notifications piled up like hail. "Savannah, fix this. Mom. People are concerned. Call me now. Nout. Savannah. I'm crying. Everyone sees this, and you let it happen. Mom, this is embarrassing for the whole family." Not one text asked what happened. Not one text checked on Lily. Not one acknowledged the birthday. I set the phone down and walked to the fridge because I needed cold air on my face before my irritation turned into visible annoyance. I opened it, let the cool air wash over me, then grabbed a bottle of water and leaned against the counter. The kitchen was quiet except for the buzz of the refrigerator, and I let the calm build back up because the alternative wasn't worth my time. I wasn't going to reply. I wasn't going to defend myself in a public forum like a contestant on a reality show she auditioned me for without consent. I wasn't going to feed the drama that Savannah had crafted with the precision of someone who'd had years of practice. Silence has weight. Silence has shape. Silence can be louder than shouting, especially when someone expects you to scream. I returned to the couch and scrolled through the comments again. A few people pushed back. "Feels like we're missing details. Why talk about this publicly? Shouldn't you handle this privately?" But Savannah responded to each one with some new emotional flourish. If she put this much effort into a job application, she'd be CEO of something. As she kept going, I noticed a detail that almost made me laugh. She wrote that she'd never asked for more money than necessary. I could think of at least a dozen messages that contradicted that statement so aggressively they should have come with warning labels. But still, I didn't respond. Not because I couldn't, but because responding would have meant playing her game, and I was done with that game. I'd resigned from it, honorably, with immediate effect. Instead, I made myself a late-night sandwich, the kind built from random fridge leftovers: turkey, cheese, lettuce that had about 1 day of life left. Lily would have judged me for putting too much mustard on it. I ate it anyway, letting the normalcy settle into my system one slow bite at a time. My phone lit up again. Another tag, another comment thread, another attempt from Savannah to twist people into orbit around her. I ignored it and rinsed my plate in the sink. By 10:30, the Facebook post had more than 200 comments. Half of them were people debating whether I was a terrible sister or whether Savannah was being dramatic. Mom had joined the thread too, posting vague statements like, "We're just hurt and confused," and "family issues can be complicated." Complicated was her favorite word for, Savannah did something wrong but I can't admit it. I opened the back door to get some air. The night breeze felt cool, cutting through the leftover heat of the day. The backyard looked calmer now that the remnants of the party were gone. The quiet felt deserved, earned. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice, then stopped. A streetlight flickered near the corner. Nothing in the neighborhood looked different, but something in me wouldn't go back to the way it was. I went inside and put my phone on the charger. I didn't check it again. The drama could spin on its own without my participation. Right as I turned off the living room light, another notification blinked on the lock screen. A direct message from someone I barely knew in town. "Emily, you should see this." The preview showed a sound file icon. That alone told me more than words did. The sound file icon sat on the lock screen long enough for the glow to fade, but not long enough for curiosity to loosen its grip. I picked up the phone, not because I wanted more drama, but because ignoring it felt like pretending the fire alarm wasn't beeping. The message was from Lauren, my cousin on Dad's side, the one person in the family tree with both a functioning moral compass and the ability to use her phone without turning every situation into a performance piece. Her message didn't come with any explanation. Just the audio file and a second line. "You need to hear it yourself." I tapped it. The clip started with background chatter, a hum of voices, maybe a TV in another room. Then I heard my mother's voice sharp, clipped, in that familiar teacher scolding a student tone she defaulted to when she wanted to sound like the victim in a story she wrote herself. "She cut us off, Savannah," Mom said. "I don't know what's gotten into her." Savannah replied dramatically. "She's just selfish, always has been. She thinks because she wears a uniform she's better than everyone." Lexi. I rolled my eyes so hard I nearly sprained something. The audio continued with Savannah adding, "Honestly, I only ever took that kid to the park once. I don't know why Emily expects me to care so much. Lily isn't my problem." She said it again. The same ugly sentence from the birthday call. Word for word, but this time with a whiny, annoyed edge, like she realized saying it was wrong but said it anyway. Then something else came through Dad's voice, quiet but unmistakable. "Sav, you shouldn't say that, she's your niece." A pause. Then Savannah scoffed. "She won't know the difference." The clip ended. Not long. Not dramatic. Not the explosion you'd expect from a family fight. But it was enough to strip away every excuse, every apology they might try later. Hearing Dad speak up surprised me, but not in a comforting way. It was the tone of someone who saw the fire but didn't bother grabbing a hose. I didn't text Lauren back right away. I just sat there with the phone warming my palm. The quiet around me didn't feel heavy this time. It felt factual, like the air had finally stopped lying. I walked into the kitchen and got a glass of water. The tiles were cool under my feet, and the hum of the refrigerator seemed louder than usual. I let the water fill the glass slowly because movement helped me think better than stillness ever did. Savannah wasn't just framing herself as the victim, she was doubling down on it, publicly and privately. She was lying to the town, lying to Mom, lying to herself. And the worst part? Mom let her. Mom participated in it. Mom kept feeding it. The military trains you to recognize patterns before they become threats. And right then, the pattern couldn't have been more obvious if it were waving a neon flag. Savannah escalates a situation. Mom shields hair. Dad stays quiet. I clean everything up. Except the last part wasn't happening anymore. I set the glass down and exhaled once through my nose. The kind of exhale you do before you make a decision you know won't come undone. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. The kind of clarity that shows up only after you stop caring what it costs. My phone vibrated again, this time a call from Mom. I answered because avoiding her forever wasn't realistic. She didn't ease into the conversation. She didn't ask about Lily or my day or anything typical mothers ask without thinking. She jumped straight in like she was diving into a pool labeled "Blame Emily." "I saw what you did," she said. "What I did?" I repeated, genuinely lost. I hadn't responded to anything. "You humiliated your sister." I leaned against the counter, eyebrow raised even though she couldn't see it. "I haven't said a word, Mom." "No." "Well, people are talking," she snapped, as if people talking was my superpower and not Savannah's main hobby. "You made her cry." I almost laughed. "Mom, Savannah posted a 3-paragraph monologue about me. She lied about taking care of you. She lied about Lily. She lied about needing all that money." Mom didn't let me finish. "You should have kept this private. We're family." Family. The magic word. The shield. The excuse. The cage. I kept my tone calm. She said Lily doesn't matter to her. Mom went quiet for a moment, not shocked, calculating. Then she said, Savannah says you misheard. I almost dropped the phone. Mom, it's recorded. Another pause. Longer this time. Then she tried the most fragile deflection I'd ever heard her attempt. Well, I don't like the tone of it. The tone. Not the content. Not the meaning. Not the implication. Not the cruelty. The tone. Something inside me steadied. Mom, you raised 2 daughters. One acts like a victim. The other acts like an adult. And you keep choosing the one who makes your life harder. That's not fair, she said. It's not meant to be fair, I replied. It's meant to be true. Before she could answer, Savannah yelled in the background, Are you defending her? Mom didn't respond fast enough, which was its own answer. Savannah snatched the phone. Emily, she hissed. You need to stop this right now. I'm not doing anything, I said. You're making me look bad. You're doing that yourself. Her breath caught in her throat like she'd been slapped by reality for the first time in years. I swear, if you don't, I cut her off. I'm done, Savannah. With the money, with the guilt, with the lies, with all of this. For a moment, I heard only the static rustle of the phone. Then she said something soft, quiet, almost trembling. You think you can live without us? I didn't hesitate to. Yes. I ended the call. Not slammed. Not dramatic. Just done. I placed the phone face down again, but this time the silence didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like protection. The kind you choose, not the kind you bury yourself under. In the hallway, something creaked as the house settled for the night. I checked on Lily, her small frame curled in sleep, her bunny tucked under her arm. I brushed hair off her forehead and let myself breathe normally again. Whatever storm the family wanted to create, it wouldn't come through us anymore. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't rush. I didn't dread it. I didn't fear the fallout. When I finally looked at the screen, it wasn't Savannah. It was my cousin Lauren again. She'd sent a picture. A crowded yard. A circle of relatives. Faces turned towards something or someone. And one line beneath it. They showed up at the reunion. No. Lauren's picture stayed on my screen long enough for my pulse to tick upward, not in panic, but in the kind of alertness the army drills into you, steady, focused, no wasted energy. The photo showed a backyard full of folding tables and plastic cups, the typical setup for our family reunions. Cheap decorations, sunburned uncles, too much potato salad, kids running around with popsicles melting down their arms. And right in the center of the crowd, unmistakable even from a blurry zoomed shot, stood Savannah and my mother. I didn't need the caption to guess what they were doing there. If Savannah sensed an audience, she treated it like a stage. And if Mom sensed sympathy, she treated it like oxygen. I took a slow breath, letting the information settle before reacting. The kitchen felt still around me, the kind of quiet that allowed thoughts to fall into place instead of crashing into each other. I set the phone down for a moment, not because I was overwhelmed, but because I wanted clarity before diving into whatever mess Savannah had decided to create next. When I picked it back up, another message from Lauren came in. You're gonna want to hear this. She sent a short video. I hit play. The camera was shaky, as if someone was pretending not to film while absolutely filming. The backyard sounds came through clearly, kids yelling, a lawnmower humming somewhere in the distance, someone laughing at an inside joke. Then the chatter lowered, shifting toward the center of the group where Mom was talking. Her voice was thick with manufactured emotion. We don't know why Emily is acting like this, she said, holding a tissue she definitely didn't need. We've always tried to support her. Savannah has carried so much of the burden while Emily just pulled away. Not prevent. The camera turned slightly, catching Savannah nodding dramatically, eyes cast downward as if auditioning for a daytime soap opera. One of my aunts murmured sympathetically, It's such a shame. She used to be so responsible. That one would have made me laugh if the situation weren't so irritating. I was responsible, the responsible one, every time they needed something. Every time a bill was due. Every time a crisis appeared. Every time Savannah cried help. Mom kept talking. She threw us aside with no warning, she said. I don't know how a daughter can do that. No warning. I'd given 8 months of warnings in the form of my bank account slowly evaporating. Then Savannah stepped in, sniffing dramatically like she'd been crying for days instead of performing for 5 minutes. I tried to help Emily, she said, but she's different now, cold, uncaring. I'm worried about her. Now. A few relatives made concerned noises, the kind people make when they don't know what's happening but want to sound supportive anyway. Dad stood behind them, looking like he wished the grass would swallow him alive. His posture said everything. He knew Savannah was lying, but he wasn't going to challenge her, not in public, not in private, not ever. Lauren moved closer, the camera angle shifting until Savannah and my mother filled the frame. Mom dabbed her eyes again, then held up a printed picture, Lily's birthday photo. Lily in her pink dress, frosting smeared on her cheek, hair tied in a bow she insisted on because it made her look magic. Mom's voice cracked for effect. She makes it sound like we don't care about Lily. Lauren whispered into the camera. Wait for it. Savannah interrupted Mom with a rehearsed tremble. We love Lily. We just needed space. A murmur of sympathy rippled across the yard. That was their moment, playing innocent, gathering pity, rewriting the story in real time. They almost had the crowd. Almost. Then another voice cut through the circle. Lauren's. She stepped forward, holding her phone at full volume. Oh, you love Lily? She said loudly enough that the side conversations died instantly. Funny, because I have something you said about her. Savannah's eyes widened, that split-second flash of panic she always tried to hide but never hid well enough. What are you doing? She hissed. Lauren ignored her and hit play on the audio clip she'd sent me earlier. Savannah's voice came out loud and unmistakable across the quiet yard. Lily isn't my problem. She won't know the difference. A collective gasp rose from the group. Plastic forks paused midair. An uncle dropped a beer. Someone muttered, "Oh, hell no." The lawnmower in the distance became the only background noise. Every face turned toward Savannah and my mother. Mom went pale, holding her tissue like she suddenly wasn't sure whether to dab her eyes or hide behind it. Savannah froze entirely, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched tight enough to crack a tooth. Lauren added calmly, "You said that 2 days ago, right before you posted all that crap about Emily." Uncle James stepped forward, the same uncle who never raised his voice except at football games. He looked at Mom first. "Is that how you talk about your granddaughter?" Mom opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Not even a lie, which was impressive. Then he looked at Savannah. "And you, why would you say something like that, about a child?" Savannah stammered. "That clip is out of context." Lauren crossed her arms. "What's the context where that sentence works, Sav?" No one answered. Because there wasn't one. Someone in the crowd whispered, "This is ugly." Another said, "I feel sorry for Emily." A woman near the back shook her head and muttered, "Posting lies on Facebook? That's low." Little by little, the group shifted not toward sympathy for Savannah, but away from her. You could feel the temperature of the crowd change. Their faces said everything. Disappointment, shock, disgust at the idea of disowning a child. Mom tried one last ploy. "We're just overwhelmed," she said weakly, voice wobbling like she hoped pity might still be an option. Uncle James shook his head. "You two need to leave," he said, not loud, not angry, just firm in a way that allowed no misunderstanding. No one argued. No one defended them. No one followed as Mom and Savannah turned and walked out of the yard, stiff and silent, their dramatic exit ruined by the fact that no one cared enough to stop them. When the video ended, I set my phone down, not fast, not in shock, just with the quiet understanding of someone watching the truth finally do its job. The house around me felt steady, grounded, no applause, no triumph, just the simple fact that lies eventually collapse under their own weight, even when you're not the one pushing. I glanced toward Lily's room, where she slept without knowing any of this had unfolded. Her nightlight cast a soft glow across the hallway, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the ground under my feet stop shifting. The truth had spoken without me lifting a finger. And the fallout wasn't mine to carry. The hallway light cast a soft line across the floor, enough for me to see the quiet shape of Lily's door while the last seconds of the video replayed in my mind. Not the drama, not the confrontation, not even the shock on my relatives' faces. What stayed with me was something much smaller. The way the truth sat in the open air with no more effort from me. I didn't have to defend myself. I didn't have to unravel anything. Everything that needed to be said existed on its own now, without my interference. That stillness made it easy to drift toward the kitchen and get a glass of water. The house felt settled, like it had finally taken the breath it had been holding for months. I sipped the water, leaning against the counter, letting the coolness anchor me. For the first time in a long stretch of days, my shoulders dropped exactly where they were supposed to sit. Not tense, not bracing, resting. The next morning, sunlight came through the blinds in long, soft stripes. The quiet wasn't the kind that follows a storm. It was the kind that belongs to a home that no longer needs to brace for someone else's temper. Lily padded into the bedroom, dragging her stuffed bunny by one ear, hair sticking up in 4 different directions, announcing that she wanted pancakes shaped like hearts because circle pancakes are just too normal today. We made heart pancakes. Crooked ones, lopsided ones, ones missing a whole side because I'd flipped them too early. She loved every one of them. She smeared syrup across the table, giggled when the bunny almost tipped into the plate, and asked if we could go to the park later. It was exactly the kind of morning that makes you realize how much noise you've been carrying that wasn't yours. After breakfast, while she watched cartoons, I finally checked my phone. Overnight, I'd gotten 50 notifications from the town Facebook group, 3 missed calls from Mom, 1 from Dad, 8 texts from Savannah, and a handful of messages from relatives who apparently wanted to offer commentary on yesterday's public meltdown. I didn't open any of the messages from Mom or Savannah. I scrolled through a few comments from the group not because I needed validation, but because curiosity is a powerful thing. People were ripping into the lies. Not in a brutal way, just in a matter-of-fact way. This is why you don't drag private issues online. It sounded fishy from the beginning. Poor kid. Glad someone stood up for her. That audio clip was pretty telling. Then a comment from someone I didn't even know. Emily doesn't owe them anything, good for her. A stranger defending me felt oddly grounding. Not necessary, not comforting, just evidence that outsiders saw what I'd known deep down. The story didn't need embellishment. It was simple. And Savannah had exposed herself more thoroughly than I ever could have. I put the phone down and felt no urge to reply to anyone. I wasn't mad. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't vindictive. I just didn't feel obligated to participate anymore. The doorbell rang a little past noon. Ryan stood on the porch holding a bag of groceries and a toolkit, dressed like he'd come from a hardware store job he didn't have. He looked at me the way only someone who shares your DNA and your trauma history can look, half sympathy, half exhausted amusement. "You okay?" he asked. "Better than okay," I said. He walked inside without waiting for permission. "I saw the video." "Everyone saw the video," I said. He set the groceries down and let out a low whistle. Sav went nuclear on herself. I shrugged. She lit the match. Lauren held the microphone. "That," Ryan laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from relief more than humor. "Well, at least now the whole family knows who's been draining you." "They always knew," I said. "They just didn't want to acknowledge it." He leaned against the counter. "What now?" "Now, nothing," I said simply. "I'm done." He studied me for a moment, then nodded like he'd been waiting for that exact sentence. "Good. You deserved a break 15 years ago." He stayed for lunch, played with Lily, fixed a wobbly kitchen chair, watched some nonsense kid show with her while pretending he didn't like it. The house felt more like home with him there, not because he was fixing anything big, but because he wasn't breaking anything small. By the time he left, Lily was drawing superhero pictures of Uncle Ryan saving the day, complete with dramatic capes and a suspicious number of muscles. I hung her drawing on the fridge next to last week's crayon masterpiece. The refrigerator door looked more like a museum than an appliance at this point, but it was a museum I actually liked. Later that afternoon, an envelope appeared in the mailbox. Cream-colored paper. My name written neatly on the front. I opened it on the porch, expecting some letter from a school fundraiser or a coupon book. Instead, I found a short note from Aunt Virginia. She'd written, "You chose your child. They chose their pride. That's the difference between family and obligation." Line. No dramatic flourish, no lecture, just a truth delivered gently, the way truth should be delivered when you've finally cleared out all the lies. I folded it and slipped it into a drawer inside, the one that held Lily's baby bracelet, her first drawing of a stick figure family, and the few keepsakes I actually wanted to keep. That note belonged there. The evening drifted into focus without any interruptions from my phone. No arguments, no requests, no demands disguised as emergencies. Lily and I sat on the floor coloring dinosaurs that didn't follow any scientific accuracy. She made hers pink with stars. I made mine blue with crooked teeth. We laughed at how weird they looked. Nothing about the moment was extraordinary, but it was peaceful. And peace, it turns out, is extraordinary enough. When it was time for bed, Lily asked one question as she curled under her blanket. Can Uncle Ryan come to my next birthday? I smiled. Yeah, sweetheart, he'll be there. Not. She nodded like that answer settled everything in the universe, then drifted off holding her stuffed bunny, its ear wedged under her chin. I turned off her light, left the door cracked the way she liked, and stood in the hallway for a second, not thinking, not analyzing, just appreciating the quiet for what it was. A choice. A boundary. A home. When I returned to the kitchen, my phone buzzed once on the counter. One new message. I glanced at the screen and saw the name. Mom. I didn't pick it up. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because my life finally had room for the things that mattered, and answering her would have handed that room back to chaos. I turned off the kitchen light, letting the house settle into its nighttime calm, and walked down the hallway toward my room, each step easy, steady, unburdened. Not every story needs a dramatic ending. Some just need a clean one, and this one finally had it.